Here we go.
G'day fans and welcome to another exciting episode of Rip It Off the Card. I think I pressed the wrong buttons there and actually screwed up the introductions.
We're all professionals here.
Oh, God, I tell you what, even after all these years, I still can't get it right. All these years. Do you like the sound of that? Absolutely fantastic. So everybody's joining us now. Look at this, absolutely awesome. We've got Andrew, we've got Greg, and there's probably a bunch of other people who are signing in even as we speak, which is very, very cool. So welcome to everybody who's also on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitch, if anybody is watching us on Twitch. But here we are, back for another exciting episode. How you go, Mr. Aaron?
Oh, I'm good. We got some good Twitch numbers last week, didn't we?
Yeah, I don't know. Were we twitching or twerking and twitching? So, yes, there's a question you got to ask yourself.
Yeah, I've had a good week. I had a long weekend and took the time off, so I'm just getting back into work mode now.
Very good stuff. Now, I've got to show you something which is actually quite funny. Now, last week, and Carol's here, which is good. Carol sent through this image on Facebook of us on her television, which I thought was kind of cool. And obviously, like, we're not on Facebook when we do this, so I didn't get to see it until after we'd finished the broadcast. And so look at that. She actually posted it on Facebook. Fantastic. You and I on her TV, and of course, straight after that, her TV screen cracked. But what I thought funny is that friend Helen asked what she was watching, and I got it covered in the box in the bottom there. And Carol said to Helen, a show about collectibles. I was streaming it on the telly. And I thought what Carol should have said was, I'm watching a pair of knobs on the tube talking crap. Well, at least one of them was. That's probably closer to the truth. What do you reckon?
Well, I think what's cool about that is we get, 20 to 30 people watch us live. So we're doing better numbers than Channel 31.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, look at this. We're talking about twitching earlier. Greg has just said, look, he's twitching, anticipating Doctor Who awesomeness. Oh, my goodness gracious me. So there you go. Good on you, Carol.
Got a bit of feedback from last week's show from guys in America and England and all over the place. So it's had a bit of a reach. Very specific, though, classic Doctor Who, but we'll be talking about that later.
Very good. And I was just going to say, Carol, yes, we're big ass on the big screen. Yeah. Well, you shouldn't be talking about our posteriors like that, but you can. I guess it's the fan credibility side of us, if you will. So very, very cool. Now, one of the things we've got to cover off weekly, we do our weekly section where we have people come into the store. And who have we got this week, Mr. Aaron? Once again, I wasn't there for this, but you were. And who have we got?
So we've got one of our regulars, Rob Bubos. I don't know if that's his real last name. Probably not. I think it's named after the Star Wars character. Rob's an old friend. Who's I've known for a couple of years. He used to come in collecting for his girls, and slowly but surely the girls would stop coming in, and he just comes in and collects by himself now. So I think using his girls to come in and collect toys was a bit of an excuse to come and grab stuff.
Very good. Now, I did notice that good old Rob's not wearing the Hawaiian shirt that features my wonderful face. And what was the reason for that? Just Rob said, nah, sorry, that's just crossing too many boundaries, or what?
Well, a lot of people like to slip into you, but he decided not to. So I don't know why. I thought we did get it, but maybe not. So I know we've already got pictures for next week, and next week's surprise rider is wearing the shirt.
Very good stuff. All right. Well, oh, really? Okay. Well, there you go. Very, very cool. All right. I guess we should move in because like last week we ran way over time talking about Doctor Who stuff. And of course, this week is more Doctor Who stuff. So as we said, we just had now Aaron wasn't happy with the way I did all my slides and things. So he's decided to put his own videos together. So we're kicking off with this. Oh. So it didn't even work. I didn't even get the pictures in. So hang on, I got to try that again. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, there we go. Hang on, just talk amongst the crowd for a sec, will you, man?
Well, I just like to point out, I was happy with Dags' stuff. I was just like upgrading and getting some different music and stuff into the show. So this is our new introduction for news and stuff that's new.
So was it worth waiting for? Probably not. So let's get straight into it.
Okay, here we go. This is one of the coolest items I think I've seen for a while. Is it a Jurassic Park toy? Is it a Transformer toy? No, it's better. It's both. Hasbro have decided to release another one of their movie-themed Transformer sets. They've done the DeLorean from Back to the Future and a couple of others. I think this one is particularly cool because you've got the Autobot, which is the Jurassic Park Jeep, but then you've got the Decepticon, which is the Beast Wars Tyrannosaurus Rex. So it really fits as a Jurassic Park set and a Transformer set. And I don't collect a lot of Transformers, but I will probably be grabbing this one.
So my question to you would be, which glass cabinet would you put this into in your store?
Well, I'd rip it off the card, mate, and I'd put one in the Transformer set and one in the Jurassic Park set.
Love it. Yeah, and it'd be kind of confusing, wouldn't it? But yeah, that's an interesting sort of combination of genres there. So not entirely sure what the motivation is, but if these sell well, you probably find that they'll start doing that with a whole lot of different things. And that'll actually mean that the day that I put the Transformers car into the Masters of the Universe cabinet by a mistake, who knows, one day they will do a mishmash of the two, and I'll put it in there by like correctly. How good is that?
Well, do you know what? Do you know what, Dags? Life will find a way.
Yeah, very good. Now, as we always know, if you're going to have a CC, once you pop, you can't stop. And sure enough, we can't stop here. How good's that?
Well, here's something interesting. Popeye isn't a franchise that you see a lot of figures for. And there hasn't really been anything new Popeye for a while. Occasionally something will come through. Now, here's a really nice set of Popeye figures for anyone who's a bit nostalgic for sailors and olive oil. There's a new set of Popeye figures coming out. They're called Popeye Classics, so they look very much like the original Popeye. You've got Popeye, Olive Oil, and his friends. There you've got, I can't remember what their son was called. I used to watch the cartoon as well. Do you remember, Dags?
No, I actually made a point of not looking this up because I thought they're looking it up as cheating. And I got no freaking idea. So the little dude.
Like idiots. Congratulations. I think that was Wimpy and a couple of the sidekicks. So they've actually gone beyond just the original Popeye, Olive Oil, and Bluto. But I think Bluto is the best one.
I like this from Jared. You got Popeye and you got Pop Off. So there you go. Very, very
That's
cool.
what happens when you eat too much spinach.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, Bluto's quite good, very muscular, and I really love the expression on his face. It captures sort of that bullying, tough guy look that he always was in Popeye the Sailor Man.
Well, look at it. It actually looks like he's got constipation. Maybe he's had too much spinach and found he's a bit blocked up because he's not looking too happy there at all. So there you go.
And there's Popeye, of course, with the classic Sweet Pea, that's right. I should have known that. So the classic can of spinach that he used to just crush with his bare hands to pop the spinach into his mouth, which is fantastic. So
you know why he ate spinach?
Well, they did a research thing that said spinach had a lot of iron in, but it actually got the decimal point in the wrong spot. But it was to make kids want spinach.
Yep, that's absolutely right for those who didn't know that. So if it's good enough for Popeye, even though he's eating it raw straight out of the can, it's good enough for anybody. So there you go. Yes. But, yeah, I agree with you. It's a nice looking set. But as to the demand of it will be interesting because people say, well, I really like it, but I don't want it. But, each their own. So there you go.
Yes.
But very, very cool. But one thing that people will go a bit nuts over, oh, my God, it's a bit of Star Wars. How good's this?
Now, this was announced yesterday. It is the Mandalorian armorer, or the armorer from the Mandalorian first season, which is a very cool figure. And, of course, what do they do with most cool figures? They make them Toy Fair exclusive, so harder to get than the average figure, which is great if you can get one, but not great if you have to buy one on the secondary market on eBay because often they go for many times what they originally cost. This figure is going to be, I would say, in pretty high demand. Anything Mandalorian is pretty popular at the moment. Comes with lots of accessories, so all her Foundry stuff and Beskar to melt down. And then it's a really accurate version of the costume. It even has the real fur on the back, which I think always looks a lot better than when they try to mold plastic fur. There's all the accessories that it comes with. So if you are a Star Wars fan, if you can find one and pre-order them, they're usually cheapest at this point. After they've sold out, then they start getting the scalpers on eBay, selling them for 100 more, 200 more kind of thing. So I think that'll be a top pick for the week.
Very good. I like this from the Vial. Put a black cloak and a red lightsaber with Bluto, and you've got a Lord Vial action figure. Now I've got a reason to go out and get one of those. So the problem is that Mr. Vial, the expression will still be the same. So you're still on the can trying to cut loose, as it were. So, it's very, very cool.
Well, Michael, you know this is the show that makes dreams happen. So you put that out into the universe, and 3 episodes later, a really bad custom version of it turns up on the show. So we'll see what we can do.
Very good. And Jared says, yeah, I can see a lot of the nerds melting them down to replicate the Beskar. Oh, yeah, using solder. Solder. Yeah, that's solder for the Beskar armor. Yeah, it makes sense. Get a bit of the old chrome look there. Looking very, very cool. So there you go. Very good. Now, we were talking about fancy intros earlier, which kind of didn't play properly. But anyway, Aaron wasn't good and happy just giving me one of them. He's given me a couple. And let's play the next one because it's at our next section. Wait for it. Oh, how exciting is that? So
there we go. We're looking more and more professional all the time. And just for everyone, we have the sound bites at such a small amount so we don't get strikes for copyright.
Yeah, exactly right. Very cool. Look, even Phil had said he'd pick up a Vial action figure. I mean, there's nothing like violating your action figures. What can I say? All right, so we've got the eBay section. What's all this about tonight, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I thought we would go for something we haven't done before, tin toys and robots. So if you love your tin and metal toys, or you're into your space robots and wind-up things, this is the episode where you will shine by being able to tell us what these things are worth.
And ironically, the first thing is not a robot.
Well, it's a tin toy. So here we have 3 crappy old Australian cars. They look in used average condition. They're not small Matchbox cars. They're the larger ones. So they're the type of Tonka truck size cars you might see kids playing with in the sandpit or something like that. So we'll start off with this. How much would you pay for a second-hand car from Australia?
So if you're not used or not familiar with what we're doing, you've just got to give us a price as to what you think these sold for. And these were sold, so they're not available on eBay at the moment. What's funny is this reminds me of going to old science fiction fan club meetings because nobody owned a brand new car. No one had the money for it, and everybody had a crappy car. And you could actually tell who was attending the meeting just from the crappy car at the front. And some of these look pretty close to what people were driving back in the day. So there you go. All right, we've got a lot of numbers coming through. Let's get through it. All right, so Jared has said 175. Dave, good to see Dave here, is at 299. Joshua's at 99. Carol's at 200. Inga is at 75. Ange, $3,000, mate. That's $1,000 a car. 301 for Kelvin. 45 for Christy. Thomas has said 450. Jeffro is at 400. Rob, good to see Rob here. He's a bit of a spanking fan. 150. William has said 275. Phil has said 700. Greg has gone for $2 each, so that's only $6. You probably could buy the real car for that price. Colin, good to see Colin joining us tonight for 80. Colin again has said 100. The Vial violating these tin cars at $150, and Adrian, good to see Adrian joining us tonight at 900. So there you go. So these are Win Toys rare. I actually remember Win Toys back in even my day, back in the 70s. So, in fact, I think that truck on the left, I had a variation of one of those back then when I was a little tacker back in the day. So there you go. All right, so it's a bit of an interesting one. They're old, but they're tin and they're rare because the word rare always pushes the price up. So what do you reckon these went for, kids? They went for a whopping $2,200. How about that?
So that's a lot for those old cars. I've got to say, if they were the type of things I saw kicking around in an op shop, I wouldn't know the price of those. They're not my specialty, so I'd probably let them go. I think
Ange's got this. Yeah, and he gets change as well. And now we've said this before in previous episodes. Ange is the dude to watch. Sometimes he'll put in absolutely bullshit numbers and he'll still get the price right. But he gets some change. He gets $800 back. Well done, Mr. Ange. Good for you.
There you go. And for anyone watching the first time, the prize at the end of all of this is absolutely nothing.
Very good. And I love the responses from people. Oh, geez, look at Carol. It's like, oh, Jesus, wow. Carol, oh, my God. Hang on, sorry. I just had one, didn't I? Ange is one very, very happy. I was supposed to say, oh, my God. Yeah, gotcha. So, yes, very, very good. So, all right, we move on to the next one now. I think we do actually have a robot.
So this is a robot. It's a vintage Japanese tin plate machine gear robot from the 60s. Now, the thing is with a lot of these robots, because the machinery to make them wasn't thrown away, they get reproduced a lot. But this is an original 60s one. They can go for quite a bit, but sometimes you can pick them up cheap as well. These are quite, crazy. Again, I can't tell the price of these when you see them. You really have to look them up because some of them go for a fortune and some of them don't go for anything at all. It just depends which ones they are. The other really interesting thing is there is a great shop in America called Robot Island, and they've done deals with different companies in Hong Kong and Japan who have the original molds, and they do reissues, but in a different color. So you can still get an original looking one, but it'll be different from the actual one that came out. But this is an original one. That was just an aside. Let's see what we are going to get for this.
And I just want to add in, I agree with you, Rob. I would rather spend the money, the $2,200, on a Lord Vile action figure. Oh, that would be just the greatest thing ever. All right, so $1,375 from Jared. Inga has said $333, if original, and it would be as a 7.5 from Colin. The other Colin has said $75. They're going back to back. These guys. Kelvin has said $705. Angie won the last one, is at $9.02, and that 2 cents, man, may make all the difference. You never know. $2.50 from Joshua. Rob is at $460, I think it is. Williams at $1,200. Thomas is at $225. Dave's at $399. The vial. He's done it in yen. Oh, that's just grouse. Don't you love it when you get some countries whose currency is so valueless that they can have these gigantic billion-dollar numbers, and they're only like $50. Matt has said $800. Adrian has said $2,000. Carol's at $500. Okay, Rob, sorry, that's $60. Thank you very much. Phil has said $1,000 for this, which is very good. And he's asking, the last one, Phil went for $2,200. So there you go. And yes, you can have the real vial for just $500. Sorry, I've got to go, guys. I'm going to go and buy myself a vial. There you go. All right, so what do you reckon? A vintage Horikawa tin plate metal shoe, 1960s. So yes, how about that? So if only this toy could talk the history that it would have gone through. How good is that? So there you go. All right, a tin working with some cosmetic damage, and only one person bought it. So there you go. And the price for this went for a whopping $6.95. I
think that was pretty reasonable for this robot, because I've seen the equivalent robots from the 60s go for thousands of dollars, occasionally over $10,000. So I guess it's an easier one to find.
I think off the top of my head, Kelvin has this, and he has $10 to spare. Kelvin, I think this is your first one, your first victory. How good is that? I don't think anybody else has gotten near you, so there you go. Well done,
Kelvin.
Very good. He probably wishes it was a DVD or a Blu-ray, but he can't have everything. So there you go. Very, very good stuff. All right, so I think we're sticking on the theme of robots. So now that you know what that one was worth, or this one, what do you reckon this is worth?
So surely this one is an interesting one. It's a retro Japanese toy robot. It is an original, but it's not an original 60s one. It's an original 80s one. I remember these around in the shops. And I even remember these weren't the ones you'd go into the normal toy shop for. This would be if you go to Caribbean Gardens or Vic Market and you're looking at some of those stalls that have the Japanese robots walking around. So this is an 80s one. What do we think goes for more, 80s or 60s? On this show, you can never tell.
Very good. I'm intrigued by what this means. It says used, but AF. What does AF stand for? Do you know?
As I can't say the second word.
Good on you. Very good. All right. So, so people really now have no idea what to put in. Okay. So Colin has gone for 2,000. Carol's at $890. Jeffro's at 45. Jeffro! Ange has just chucked in. He's gone the way of Greg and gone $2. Matt has said 45. Inga's at 333. I think Inga bid that last time, actually. Dave has said 99. Adrian's at 250. The violating this robot at 55. Kelvin's at 50. Joshua's at 900. Rob is at 25. Colin again is at 980. Give or take. 450 for Thomas. Chrissy said 20, so she doesn't think it's worth much. William said 250. And Philip down the bottom here has said 700. So there you go. That's one of the great things about this particular segment is people don't usually know what these things are worth. And you can have such a variety of prices. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So there you go. All right, so there you go. So what do you reckon the vintage retro Japanese toy robot? If they had have added the word rare, it may have actually gone up for a bit more, but it went for a whopping
25 bucks. Now, I can tell you, I've had that one in the shop and it sold it up to a couple of $100 depending on condition. So that was a good price.
How about that? Well, Rob, guess what? I've lost Rob. Rob's just disappeared. Rob had it at 25, and there you go, sir. You're on the money. 5 bids went for this, and how good is that? Isn't that an interesting sort of yeah. So Joel said he owned it as a kid. Well, there you go. But hard to believe it. After 40 years, it hasn't appreciated much at all. 25 bucks, eh? Unbelievable. And there's $12 for shipping as well. So there you go. How about that? But good on you, Mr. Rob. You can put that next to your spanking. So yeah, it's very, very cool. All right, so we move on to the fourth one. Oh, look at that.
Now, this is a really interesting one. This is, and it comes with a box as well, and you noticed a lot of the stuff from this era doesn't come with boxes. This is an original vintage Wizard of Oz Tin Man robot from Renko from the 1960s. So it's not the Tin Man from the movie, but it's obviously the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz. It's just a sort of a different version. This is quite a rare item. I hadn't really seen many of these around before, so that's quite like crosses into a couple of genres. People who collect robots and tin toys and people who collect memorabilia and Wizard of Oz stuff.
I can't help but think Jared has said he had a red one that blew smoke out of its mouth. Well, guess what, Jared? Aaron and I, we blow smoke, but it's not out of our mouth. So there you go. All right. Adrian has said 1,000. Inga's at 343. She's gone up by $10. Jeffro is at 2. He doesn't know. He's gone for the 4 2s. Carol's at 500. Ann's at 25 with 3 cents. Oh, good on you. Matt's at 360. Colin actually saw this on eBay the other day. Oh, there you go.
Did you buy it, Colin?
There you go. Yeah, I'm curious to see if what other Bill's prices are in comparison to his, if it was him. Colin has said 45. Josh was at 750. Rob is at 3,000. He's got money to burn now. Kelvin's at 399. Thomas is at 850. William's at 950. Joel is at 1,200, and Joel tends to be pretty good at these things. The Vial, he wants to violate this Tin Man at 1,500. 700 from Phil. Yeah, actually, he said Colin can't remember what it went for. If you had remembered, Colin, you could have actually won this competition. And Jared has said $400. So there you go. And as Christy, I think, mentioned earlier, all you win is bragging rights, but still very, very cool. Okay, so there you go. Original vintage Wizard of Oz Tin Man from the 1960 and the box as well. So we got the box. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? So if you only had a heart, that's what I want to know. All right, so what did he go for? He went for a whopping
$40. That's one of those things. If I had seen it, I would have probably bought it for $40. There's a couple of $100 there all the way. I don't know if it was maybe he hasn't got the spout on top of his head, but I think that's like $40. Someone would pay that just for the box if they haven't got the original box with their robot.
Well, I'll tell you what, right? So I'll tell you who didn't get it. Rob didn't get it at 3,000. And Colin, Mr. Colin Parkinson at 40, he gets just an extra $5 and he's good to go. How good is that? So there you go.
One of the Collins got it.
You're right. That's the steal. Isn't that absolutely insane? Even I would argue. I would have to think to be worth a lot more.
It really is. Like when I've been watching eBay, there will be something that constantly goes for hundreds of dollars, and then one will go for $10, and it's just everyone missed it. That's just the nature of eBay.
Yeah, and there was only one bid too, by the way. So maybe, as you said in one of your presentations, the time of day makes all the difference. So there you go. All right. Yeah. So with all that in mind, we're up to our last one, and this one will sort of make your head scratch a little bit. What do you reckon this is worth?
Well, that looks like the Violator's spaceship, doesn't it? Like Lord Vial obviously rides that around. But this is it's a Spacemobile robot astronaut, another rare toy. I think this one's actually from the 50s. It's quite an early one. It's in nice-looking condition. How much would you expect to pay?
Hero to zero in one bid. I'll tell you what, Rob, your popularity of being a cool dude doesn't last long in this particular show, that's for sure. But yes, that Spaceman is violating that shit. It's a bit wrong, isn't it? They could have picked a photo from a different angle.
I thought I'd get the joke. I thought I'd get the joke in before you did.
Oh dear. Yes, it is a family show, so I'm just going to move on before I do get myself into trouble. All right. So Carol said 25. Adrian said 50. Inga's at 323. Still trying with those big numbers, but it's not working for her. Josh was at 125. Colin's at 550. 5,500. William has said, $40, and there is $40 for packaging. Doesn't say that anyway.
Free packaging, free postage on this one.
Oh yeah, there is too. Very good. David said 3,000. Ange said 3,000. Matt has said 380. Kelvin's at 200. Thomas is at 10, so he doesn't think violating this rocket ship is worth much. 350 from William. Colin is at 450. Jared is at 2,100. Joel's at 370. Phil's at 100. There you go. So at the very least, it'll be a good talking conversational piece at parties and things. So yes, very, very good. You are right, Jared. Yes, do Sparks Butchery at the back of it. So there you go. And Robert said 3,000. An absolute classic. All right, extremely rare. So it's not just rare, it's extremely rare. So that alone pushes the price up. Mobile robot astronaut violating this rocket, having a good time. Violating me now. Violate me now. $70. I'll tell you what, you're right, Christy. Too many dirty minds in your family. Too many dirty minds watching this show. All right, let's move on. So what do we reckon this went for? It went for, look at that, one of those ridiculous prices that Ange usually gives out.
Yeah, $2,111, which was 14 bids as well. So there's a few people that wanted the Violator cycle.
So Jared looks like he's got this, and he only has to add an extra $11.
Well done, Jared. That was an unusual one. When I do the search for this, sometimes I have an idea of the prices, and sometimes I have no idea. And there's so many different tin toys and robots. Unless you specialize, you just don't know. So some of these surprised me. But who would have thought the most expensive thing for the evening was those beaten up cars?
Yeah, exactly right. And you do wonder when they design some of these robots, whether some of the designers look at them and go, oh, yeah, that looks a tad dodgy. But someone said, no, put it out there. It's like, fine, it's not our problem. So there you go. Very, very cool. But yes, and you're right, kiddies. Yeah, Rockers, Bum Robot Man, and good heavens. Very, very good. All right, so we're right on almost 8:30, and we've got a whole lot to talk about Doctor Who-wise. So all you Doctor Who fans out there, Greg and everybody else, get yourself a tad excited because we're going to be talking about this. What are we going to talk about tonight, Mr. Aaron? Hopefully the video works for me again. It is
as Dags's eyes glaze over as we go back to the 60s and talk about Doctor Who merchandise, where this is the second part of our show on what was available in the 60s during Dalek Mania and the early days of Doctor Who. And this of course, is a topic that I love because this is what I collect myself. So there's some stuff from my collection, there's some stories about collecting 60s stuff, and there's a whole lot of wonderful toys from the 60s we're going to have a look at.
So we're not going to do a recap of what you missed out last week. We're just going to get straight into it. And here we go.
Here we go. So we ended up last week just before one of my favorite items of all time, and this is the Chad Valley Give a Show projector. So I don't know if anyone knows what Give a Show projectors are. Probably they've just been kept alive by collectors of Doctor Who and Thunderbirds because they were a big thing in the 60s and into the 70s. There was even a Star Wars one towards the end of their run. But yes, Dags?
I've actually got the Batman one of this.
Oh, and who sold you the slides?
Was it you, was it?
Yeah, about 30 years ago. So there you go. But basically, they're a projection device, and they come with a series of color comic slides that you can project onto the wall. And here we have some of the advertising for it. There's the Chad Valley catalogue, and then one of the color ads for one. And I think they were quite amazing because a lot of Doctor Who merchandise didn't really feature the Doctor at the time. It was a lot about the Daleks. Not only did Chad Valley feature the Doctor, they had the Daleks, the Menoptera, different things from Doctor Who. If we go to the next slide, my favourite slide, though, is one called Secrets of the TARDIS, which told you like how the TARDIS worked, how it was bigger on the inside than the outside, and it made absolutely no sense at all. But to kids in the 60s, it would have been amazing, because this was before you had books explaining that stuff, and before there was even really fan clubs and fanzines and things like that. And here's some of the fantastic art. The top middle there is the box art, which has a multicolored TARDIS on. And you've got to remember, at the time, Doctor Who was in black and white, and there weren't a lot of color pictures. So seeing these color slides would have been mind-blowing, I think.
So the Vial has made a mention of your shirt, and we'll just put them there. So I got to admit, even I was impressed with this. So do you want to... let's have a look and see. He's wearing he's actually literally wearing his fandom of Doctor Who on his sleeve. Well, he actually hasn't got sleeves, but yeah, it's very, very cool. So
I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I bought one Hawaiian shirt off of Facebook, and now every single day I get targeted by Facebook ads. And because I'm addicted and can't say no, I'm like, oh, I better put the Star Wars one in, better put the Doctor Who one in. So there'll be a few shirts debuting over the next couple of weeks.
Very, very cool. So whenever he feels like he's got to go to the doctor, he just gives himself a bit of a rub, and somewhere in a different country, one of these actors is going, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better. But yeah, so I've got to say, it is very, very groovy. So very, very cool. Well spotted, Mr. Vile. So there you go. All right.
Yeah, and we're going on to sort of some of the more boxed board games and games. Now, this is an interesting concept. It's called the Cutamastic Doctor Who and the Daleks set. Now, Cutamastic were a wire cutting and polystyrene set. They were an art set, so you would get sheets of polystyrene with different pictures and images, and you put the battery on the hot wire, and then you would cut them out and paint them and make your own dioramas. And this made them very disposable, because polystyrene doesn't really last anyway. And if you cut it up into lots of little pieces and then you paint it, they're going to be one of those things that once you've done them, you don't get much use out. I mean, you don't go and put your little coloured Doctor Who sets up after it's done. Interesting thing about this is I have the Cutamastic sets. The top corner one there, the Stingray one, which isn't Doctor Who, I managed to get my uncut Doctor Who sheets because someone sold a Stingray set, but it had been mistakenly put a Doctor Who set in. So back in the 60s, little Johnny opened up his Christmas present, and he's a big Stingray fan, and they opened the box, and there's all these Daleks in it. So he probably just put the lid back in the box, and it sat in some cupboard somewhere till it ended up on eBay a year or two ago. So I was happy for that mistake. The other story I've heard, a friend of mine, Jonathan, was telling me, there's a great retro shop in the UK called Metropolis Toys, and someone brought like a mint unused one into him to sell. And they said, oh, we know it works because we turned it on earlier today and cut one of the pieces out. So someone again had kept it for 40 years, and then to make sure it still worked before they sold it, they decided to cut one of the pieces out, which probably devalued it $100 or something like that.
Just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. And there was much pain felt by all, that's for sure. Very cool.
Yes. This, I don't know if anyone knows the old classic robot toy. During the 60s, when they were putting Doctor Who items out, they'd often take a different toy and adapt it. And there was a magic robot toy, which basically you asked questions, you put the robot on a metal dish, and because of magnets, I'm giving away the secrets, it would then move around and point to the answer. Well, they made the Dalek Oracle, which was basically the same thing. And the thing that would have frustrated me as a kid and a Doctor Who fan, whenever they released these sets, it's like the Doctor Who annuals. They never had questions about Doctor Who. It was always like questions about maths and science and stuff like that. So although it's very cool and it's got all these questions and answers, it's more, general knowledge type stuff rather than Doctor Who stuff. So a lot of these have amazing 60s artwork, and they're very nice to have for the artwork, but they don't actually have a lot of Doctor Who content. The other side here, we have the Dodge the Daleks game, which I think is a fantastic name for a game. And again, the artwork is fantastic. And again, it's just one of those games where you roll the dice and make your way around the board and avoid the Daleks and the Slither to try and get to the magnetic core at the center of the Earth, which is kind of the plot from Dalek Invasion of Earth. Also, which is interesting there, and this is just me being an obsessed collector, you can see the little tokens. There's a pink, a blue, a red, and a yellow, which you use to go around the board. I've only ever seen one set with a pink token. They usually come with a yellow, a red, a blue, and a green. And I don't know if, they just put a pink one in and change them, or that's from a different toy, but it's exactly the same token, and I've only ever had one with a pink token. So if you've got a pink token Dodge the Daleks, it's a little bit rarer than the green token one.
Very good. Now, a question for you from Rob about the Give a Show projector set. Is that from your collection?
I do have the Give a Show projector set. I've had a couple of them. It is actually one of the nicest Doctor Who toys, but it's also probably one of the easiest to find. If you get on eBay, there is always one or two Give a Show projectors. They're not cheap. They go for around £200 for a nice one. You can get like an average one maybe for, £100. They don't go for much cheaper than that. They did sell individual slides. So if you had a different Give a Show projector that wasn't Doctor Who, you could pick up the slides and use them in your Doctor Who one. But yeah, so the other interesting thing about the Doctor Who Give a Show projector, there wasn't a lot of 60s merchandise released in Australia, but a friend of mine did pick one up locally that had a Maya sticker on. So the Give a Show projector was definitely one of those toys that made it out to Australia at some stage, even though I've never found one locally. But it's a lovely set. It's one of my favourite 60s toys, and yeah, I do have it.
And you are right, Mr. Phil, when it comes to Doctor Who stuff, yeah, you're not surprising that Mr. Aaron would have this. Now, I don't know if you knew this out there, kiddies, but good old the Daleks, they can't go upstairs. They're completely and utterly useless. But one thing they can do is ride motorcycles, especially during wartime, because it's the Great Escape.
There you go. And I thought the picture I put together here was really, really clever, because it's the Great Escape game, and then out of the corner, you can actually see the game, and it fits perfectly into the artwork that's on the box. And it's another great 60s Dalek artwork. I really love the aesthetic from the 60s. The Great Escape game is very interesting because Dalek Mania happened in the 60s with the Peter Cushing movies, but not a lot of merchandise for the movies came out. Well, look a bit later, there's a lot of posters. There's one or two books with the movie Daleks, but this has Peter Cushing's Doctor on the cover, sort of running away from the Daleks, which is unusual at the time to have that. And basically the game is about the size of a plate, but it's got like a maze drawn on it with pitfalls, and you have to navigate a marble through, and again you have to get it sort of all the way around to the center. And I gave up on it pretty quick, because if you're a little kid it's probably amazing, but for me I just like drop it in the second ball trying to get around, and I'm like, no, I'd rather play pinball machines or something. On the other side is another one of my favorite toys, which is the Dalek shooting game. And basically it's there's a whole lot of, again, games for Doctor Who that are adapted from other games, and this was a shoot the crows game, where basically there'd be crows and you had a cap gun and you'd shoot them down, but they thought put a snazzy artwork of Daleks on it and change the crows to Daleks, and you've got a Dalek game. And it is one of the nicest looking boxed games from the 60s. That is quite a hard one to get. I think we showed one a couple of weeks ago. One went on eBay for about £1,600. So, a chunk of change to get one of those. Interestingly enough, there are some people on eBay who go, you're missing the gun from your game. We have a replacement Dalek gun. But that gun was used in a whole lot of different games. So you can pick up the Shoot the Crows game for about £20. People take the gun out of it and put it as the Dalek gun, and it is, because it's exactly the same, sell it for £100. So it's one of those little hints and tricks. If you are looking for that piece, you can find the gun in other games that were contemporary at the time.
What I do like is the fact you got the rifle down the bottom here. So you're not just shooting him with like a little pistol. You're shooting him with a big ass friggin' like a Winchester.
Yeah, and you get a little bag of corks, and it does actually shoot. It's like pump action, and you shoot those Daleks. It is a very cool game and a very lovely piece.
That's where you go, hey, be very, very quiet. I'm hunting Daleks. So yes, exactly right. Very, very cool.
And here's one of the other games that sort of has amazing artwork on the Dalek Bagatelle. So there was 3 Dalek Bagatelles that was Doctor Who themed. There's a couple of other games that do have Daleks on and stuff, but these were the official ones. There's the long stand-up one, and there's the round one in the middle. And the round one in the middle, they did it 2 different sizes. The thing that we will see, which keeps cropping up a bit though when we go through 60s merchandise, and I hadn't really noticed until I was putting all this together, the Daleks look an awful lot similar. And it's like someone got the Dalek book that we were looking at last week, which has a really nice picture of the Dalek. And a whole lot of games, I think, use that Dalek illustration as the template for the Daleks they draw, and they all have the sort of symbol on the middle of if you look at the one on the round bagatelle at the top, it's got like a red symbol on it, which is like a Dalek number, which was a mistake by the artist at the time. But then, like when you copy someone's homework, if you copy all their spelling errors, the teacher can see it straight away. You're seeing a lot of Doctor Who merchandise that that mistake that was on that first book gets copied onto a lot of artwork for other books. So it just shows at the time there wasn't a lot of images going around, and it was still very new, young in the days of Doctor Who, and there probably wasn't a lot of reference material at the time from the BBC either.
So Colin asked how many Peter Cushing movies, Doctor Who movies there were. William has said 2. I actually thought there was only 1. So there you go.
No, there was 2. They're both pretty good, but they're of their time.
Now, we've gone through all the wussy stuff, freaking bagatelles and bloody pinball machines and like board games and shit. Boring. What we want to see is the Doc packing heat, right? He's got himself loaded up and he's ready to plug a few puppies. So the only way to do that is with this.
It is interesting because the Doctor, being like the ultimate pacifist that hardly ever used guns, there are so many Doctor Who's anti-Dalek fluid neutralizer, Doctor Who's jet immobilizer, Doctor Who's anti-Dalek neutron exterminator. And it's like, in my imagination, as a kid, you would think the Daleks are invading and Doctor Who keeps going to the military and saying, okay, we can try this against them. Okay, we can try this against them. So basically, with all the 60s toys, and I think this is all the gun toys, I think every single one of them was another toy that has been repackaged as a Doctor Who item. These items are probably some of the hardest Doctor Who items to pick up. I have never had any of those. They are extremely rare. Even beaten up ones go for hundreds of pounds on the internet. People might remember the shop Moviola. The jet immobilizer at the top, I saw in the 80s, and it was $600 in the 80s. Dave, who run Moviola, I laughed at him. I said, there is no way anyone is going to pay $600 for a water pistol. And he said to me, Aaron, you will probably never see another one of these. And he is right. I've never seen another one in the flesh. So quite rare items.
2 things. So the machine gun at the top, for those who know their history, that is clearly based off an MP40 from the Second World War, a German machine gun. You would have seen that sort of style used in 1001 war movies from the 50s and the 60s. And I like the fact that they call it a fluid neutralizer, because I can't use the BFG, the big effing gun. Blow your effing head off, And you can imagine the sequence with the Doctor, the Daleks laying on the ground. It's like, I know what you're asking, punk. Did I fluid you once or twice? The
interesting thing about that, the fluid neutralizer is a water pistol, but it's actually based on a metal gun. And what they've obviously done is get the gun from the 50s, and they've used it to make the mold because it was suitably futuristic enough, and they've made the fluid neutralizer out of an existing gun. And the neutron exterminator, I think I've got in the next picture. I didn't do it for all the toys, I could have, but I've shown the toy that they adapted for the neutron exterminator.
Yeah, they couldn't get a bigger one, could they? I mean, look at the size of that thing. It's like, you're not going to neutralize your Dalek, you're going to blow him. in the
Oh,
next
Doctor,
millennia.
that's a big one. So yes, you can see there that it was adapted from American Toy, and I think they did this because it's a British company, and if they pinch something from America and start making it with a tiny little alteration in England, they're probably not going to get picked up and taken to court over license. But you can see the bottom toy, the bazooka, is exactly the same toy with exactly the same action, and the Doctor Who toy has just put like a target thing on the top, repainted it, given it blue. The original had blue grenades. This has light white ones. Interestingly, this was actually used as a prop as well in a TV series in England in the early 70s. I don't know if anyone remembers Here Come the Double Deckers. There is an episode of that where all the bad guys are running around with the neutron exterminator, and they must have done that because it was cheap to go into the toy shop and get like a bazooka-looking gun. Now, if they had those, 5 or 10 neutron exterminators, it's probably more than what the whole episode cost to make, kind of thing, if they could sell them now.
I would love to see a sequence where you got your bazooka, big ass, what do you call it, neutron exterminator, crappy thing. You put the smallest Dalek you can find right in front of the nozzle, and he's big, and he's looking right down the barrel of this thing.
It doesn't seem very fair. If you look at the advertising for it, if you did get one of your pristine 60s Dalek toys and then you shot it with this massive gun, it probably would break up into pieces. So mission accomplished. Good one, Doctor Who.
How good is that? Who said Doctor Who was not a violent show?
This is another interesting one. I think I said last week I'm a bit of a digital hoarder. And sometimes when stuff comes up on eBay that I've never seen for years and years, actually, anything that went for stupid prices or was unusual, I used to keep a note of the item, the price, and the pictures that were on the internet listing. So this is another Doctor Who gun. It's the Anti-Dalek Sonic Disintegrator. And when this eBay item turned up, that was the first time I had actually seen the box of it. That gun was another used in different things as well. But again, this has got some of that classic artwork that you just don't see around. And when this eBay item came up, I had to save it. I couldn't afford the gun. It went for a fortune, but at least I could keep pictures of the artwork.
So can you imagine William Hartnell or Patrick Troughton? We'll go with William Hartnell going, he whips out his weapon and he goes, "Say hello to my little friend."
Emperor Dalek, do you feel lucky, punk?
Yeah, I love it. So what's happened down the bottom here is they've used one weapon to rip the Dalek open, and what this dude's now shooting is the Khaled mutant on the inside, and he wants him to feel every bit of it.
There you go. So, interestingly enough, in one of the later episodes of Doctor Who, the Doctor did use a water pistol to disable the pyrovores. So that could have been marketed as Doctor Who's anti-pyrovore water pistol, and it would have been screen accurate. But that's going into the future.
I don't know if you can read this. Up the top here, it says Anti-Dalek Disintegrator. So that actually means it doesn't disintegrate them at all. It doesn't do anything. It puts them back together.
the reintegrator gun.
Oh, unbelievable. Eh? It's like, yes, kick their effing asses gun. So there you go. Absolutely love it. Oh, we got more guns. Oh, I love it.
Well, this is the thing. Doctor Who's Astro Ray gun. I love all the artwork for these things. They're amazing. And this is an example of where they just took an existing toy, rebranding it as Doctor Who, and they had this gun in the 50s, the 60s, the Doctor Who version, and then they just changed it back to something else for the 70s and the 80s. And on the bottom right there, you can still buy this gun. They're still producing it. It's not a Doctor Who gun anymore, but it's about $30 US, and you can still get this gun brand new. So it's another one of those things that they just made it a Dalek gun. The Dalek gun, out of all the versions, goes for a whole heap more. But that's the Dalek Astro Ray gun through the decades.
So interesting. All the guns we've seen are designed to shoot Daleks, but we haven't actually seen a Dalek gun that shoots people. Imagine that. So you mark up the gun and say, this is the gun that a Dalek would use, or a Khaled mutant or whatever, and you actually show the shot of them blowing the shit out of the poor old Doctor Who. Wouldn't mark it well, would it?
That would have been a great 60s picture of like a Dalek gun with all these people exterminated and seeing, their skeletons through their bodies kind of thing. But Maybe
Well,
it was
you do it here. You replace the Dalek there with the dockie's head, and his hat coming off and his scarf billowing in the distance or whatever. That would.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Now, this is linked to guns because all those guns are really rare, but probably the rarest gun of all, and maybe possibly the rarest piece of Doctor Who merchandise of all, might have been released with the Dalek pixie boots. Now, a year or two ago, I managed to pick up the box, which you can see in the top center of the Dalek pixie boots. There's only a few pairs of the boots that exist because you can imagine they're not something once kids outgrew them that you would really keep. And up until that point, there'd only been pictures in advertising catalogues of the box. But if you look at the bottom right picture, which was from an advertising catalogue, you can see that there's pockets in the boots. And that one you're circling has a gun in, and the other one has the darts that go in the gun. So it's pretty small, but it's there. Now, I was talking to someone about 10 years ago in a line at a convention over in England, and he said when he was a little boy, he had these Dalek slippers and he might have them in the garage, which of course makes me prick my ears up and say, well, I will pay you whatever if you can find them. And I got all his details, and we emailed a couple of times, and he never ever found them. Then when I found the box a couple of years ago, I contacted him again and said, did you ever have any trouble, any luck finding the slippers? Because I've now got a box and I'd love to put the slippers with them. And I didn't hear from him until lockdown last year, where a package turned up, and I didn't know who it was from at first. And when I opened it, there was a little gun in it. And I was like, well, I still don't know what all this is about. And I've got the gun. I've got the gun here, the little gun. Mm-hmm. And I had a message from him saying, during lockdown, I had a chance to go through my garage and we had everything out. I couldn't find the slippers, but I think I found the gun that I had that went with the slippers. And unfortunately, from what you can see in the slippers, it doesn't actually match up with the one that's in the picture, which is really disappointing. So I was that close to thinking that I had found one of the, the rarest pieces of Doctor Who merchandise out there, which is just an innocuous little gun. It's about the size, I guess there was the man with the golden gun. There was Knick Knack. That's probably his gun. He would have had one that size. Kind of thing.
All I can think about, the problem with wearing Dalek slippers is that you wouldn't be able to walk up any stairs. You just stand at the foot of the stairs and go, all right, this is about as far as I can go. Now, for people out there who want to see what little Aaron would look like if he actually did get his Dalek slippers and his little gun and the whole thing, and he's going, oh, yeah, he didn't have his Doctor Who shirt because he obviously didn't have his Hawaiian shirt at that time. But what would he have looked like? He would have looked like that. He's so cute.
You can see this was another advertising picture at the time. I think you can see the guns in that are different again from the one that I eventually wound up with. You can see in the picture there again the gun sticking out of the slippers, and then there's caps in the other one, and then there's the gun that I've got, and you can see the back looks pretty close. But it isn't exactly the same. So, again, thought I had something incredibly rare, but I've just got like a little cap gun. Well, not a cap gun, a dart gun. But it just shows you the power of networking, because speaking to someone in a queue at a convention 10 years previously, and then you get a gun turn up on your doorstep.
Very true. All this talk has made William whip out his weapon, so he's shoot him. We interpret that any way you like. So good on you, William. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Put in your own pew pew sound effects. What can I say? And this little picture of this kid up here, all you want to do is put a thought bubble there saying, "Go to Aaron's Collectables. Go to Aaron's Collectables." Love it. Very, very cool. But that would have been Aaron to a T back in the day. How good is that? So we're moving away from guns. It is interesting that there's a whole section of the 60s Doctor Who merchandise that's guns, and we're going across to another area of collecting that crosses over, which is records. And I'm a big record collector, and I don't know if anyone knew, for about 10 years I managed a secondhand record shop. Yep, Dags? Yeah, this is a very good question, actually. So, hang on, sorry. Question from John saying about whether the guns really came with the thing, or whether they just put it in there for the photographs.
Well, that is a really interesting question, because there are so few of these in existence, and not many people actually remember that maybe they were just put in there with the photographs. I don't know if that was a selling catalogue. I don't know why they would put that in the picture if they weren't actually selling it with the item. But who knows, until an unopened one turns up? I guess it's one of those questions you never know. Interestingly enough, I think at the time there were spy slippers and cowboy slippers that did come with guns. So I could believe that the Doctor Who one came with guns as well. But until someone definitively finds one or works out what was happening, I guess that is, one of those unanswered questions.
Yeah, it could be funny. So you could be spending your decades looking for these weapons that actually don't exist. So there you go. Eh? Very, very cool. All right. So yes, yes, you're right, Phil. Records, yay team, vinyl forever, as we say.
Yeah. So one of the very first items of Doctor Who to come out was the records. The theme was so popular that someone managed to get like a cover of it out before the BBC even managed to get their version out, the Malcolm Lockyer Orchestra, which may or may have not been licensed. Sorry, Eric Winston. Malcolm Lockyer was later. May or may not have been licensed. And then there was different versions of the theme and different pressings of it, and that's been in and out of pressing for years and years and years. In the picture there, we can see some of the records from my collection. So there's the actual released version, and then there's the A-side versions, which are promos and demos. So, Dags, you see the one with the big red A's on them. Do you know why they put a big red A on them?
I would have thought it was for people with sight problems, because I assume on the other side it says B, but otherwise that's my only guess.
No, it's because they were promo. A lot of these would go out to DJs, and because a lot of them were unknown artists, they put a big A on them, so they made sure the DJ would actually play the right side and not the B side. Oh. So it was kind of what you're saying so it was really easy for the DJ to see which side they should be playing on air, because you could put the Doctor Who theme has Brenda and Johnny on the back. Which I always find interesting, because it's nothing to do with Doctor Who, and the Doctor Who theme has been reissued and is huge. So Brenda and Johnny, who released this track that no one listens to, must have got kickbacks years and years and years when they reissued the 45. So it was one of the most fortuitous things for them to happen ever, probably.
People are still talking about the boots, and maybe Christy's right. They put the guns in there just to show that they had pockets, even though you'd think they'd put something else in there besides guns. But it's a very good observation. So, anyway, sorry, we keep moving off target. Yes, I love my fluffy one too, but let's not go there, shall we? She'll tell me off. All right, so where am I going? We moving on?
Just stay on that one for a second. If you go,
yep,
sorry, if you go back.
Sorry, I got distracted by that fluffy things.
One of the reason why we're not playing any of the songs from this, because pretty much universally every song from the 60s that was associated with Doctor Who is pretty cringeworthy and pretty bad, so it's not worth getting the copyright strike trying to play any of them. The best of the bunch is probably Fraser Hines, Who's Doctor Who, which is just about listenable with a couple of catchy hooks on it. But I'm gonna spend my Christmas with the Dalek is one of those things that you would want to self-exterminate if you had a kid that played that over and over.
Yep. I thought you were going to say Fraser Hines is quite listenable after you've had a few drinks or smoking the wacky.
They're probably all quite listenable after a few Romulan hours. But the interesting one here, though, is the one at the top in the sort of colourful sleeve, the A side, which is the landing of the Daleks, and next to it there's a little newspaper article, and you can't read it, but I managed to pick up the newspaper article to go with my record, and the record was banned. And because even though you would say it's banned because it's quite shocking and crap, but it wasn't that reason. It was because the band used Morse code on it, and the Morse code repeated SOS, the Daleks have landed, SOS, the Daleks have landed. And apparently at the time, it was against the broadcast code to have anything in Morse code, because that would be taken as serious by the military. So if this record had played the military would be getting the message for real. SOS, the Daleks have landed, and a lot of things would have, a lot of questions would have been asked about that. So the promo version of that has the Morse code on, and apparently they had to remove it for later versions.
Very good. Sorry, I'm just going to show you something because I can. Okay, this is what I've got to put up with in my house. Look at that. So, yes, if you're wondering why I'm getting distracted, now you know why. So, yeah, it's very, very cheeky pussycat. All right, we move on. So, yes, very, very cool. Where was I? All right, good.
And here we've got some more promos and different versions of things that came out. Now we get on to sort of the later 60s stuff and the stuff that was released for the Dalek movie. If we go back 2 slides, actually, because Colin was asking about some of the pressings for this one. So that's all the Doctor Who themes. There is Australian, English and New Zealand versions of the Decca, and the really rare one at the bottom is the A-side there, which is a promo version. I've got a promo Australian version, which is on the top right, and you can see it's got the bullet sticker that meant it was from a radio station, and the sleeve is from a radio station. The New Zealand version there is really rare. I only know of 1 or 2 copies of that to turn up. One of my friends at the moment is over in New Zealand, and sadly he didn't find me a copy. So yeah, they're all rare versions. And yeah, I'm looking for the New Zealand version as well, but it doesn't turn up very much.
Very cool. Colin's also made a mention he's looking for the New Zealand one as well. And Paul had said that John Pertwee's Who's Doctor Who is better than Fraser Hines' song. That could be potentially the same with everything, just about everything, really, when you sit and think about it. So very, very cool.
And yeah, if we go on, as again, one of the only records I haven't had is the single of the Who's Who from the Dalek movie. There is a promo one available on eBay at the moment for £250. Buy it now. That's another I would get killed if I bought it to add to my record collection. So still looking for a cheaper version. If we go on to the next one, though, I think it looks at the TV 21 albums.
I was just looking before we do that. Jack Dorsey and his orchestra dance to the Daleks. How the hell would Daleks dance? They just sort of roll around. It wouldn't exactly be a very, very exciting dance, would it? It's
a total rort. It's just a waltz and doesn't have anything to do with Doctor Who at all. So they've just done it to get on the Dalek Mania hype.
Very good. And Phillips also said he's looking for the New Zealand one, so it seems to be the one in demand. There's no denying that. Very good.
Well, I was going to this because we'll look at this because there's TV21. We looked at the comics earlier, but TV21 did a set of records, mini albums, which were single size, but they played at 33. So they were longer than a normal single. That was the gimmick. They're like mini albums. Then there was one Doctor Who one. So there was a whole lot of Thunderbirds and Jerry Anderson stuff. In the middle there, you can see there's the Daleks, the Daleks, the Daleks. And these are the 3 different pressings. The first one, which is navy blue, is the English pressing with the light blue label. And then the middle one, which is a lighter blue, is the Australian pressing with the black and yellow Astor label. And then the last one, which has the purple cover, is the New Zealand pressing that has the lighter version New Zealand label. And I have found that not a lot of people realise they've got the New Zealand version because on the back it still says on the sleeve printed in the UK. It's only on the label that says New Zealand. So there's always a lot of these on eBay, but if you're looking for the New Zealand one, click on every single one and then look at the label. And that's how I found my New Zealand one. Someone had just mislabeled it as the UK one and they didn't realise that there was a variant. And one of the things I am looking for, the TV21 themes down in the bottom right corner, there was apparently a New Zealand pressing of that as well. And I've been looking for that for ages, but one, never seems to actually pop up. So this probably is my favourite Dalek album because it's almost one entire episode of Doctor Who. It's the Daleks versus the Mechanoids in an episode of The Chase. So before the videos and streaming media came out, this was one of the only ways to experience the William Hartnell episodes if you didn't have recordings of them.
They've obviously got their genres, franchises all buggered up because it says here these latest discs are fab. Well, that's like from Thunderbirds. Someone's got that one up.
I think some of those are Thunderbirds ones.
Okay, yeah, well, right, yeah, there is too. So I'm just saying in the Doctor Who zone because it didn't say FAB, but yeah, okay, I got you there. Just ruined my joke, didn't it? And Paul apparently has found a picture of a dancing Dalek. Make of that or what you will. So there you go. Very cool.
And here we're moving on to sort of, I guess, the more stationary stuff. And this, again, is stuff that is very, very hard to find because it was all disposable. And you've got Doctor Who birthday cards, which very hard to get. I've only got 2 out of the 4. And one of mine is dedicated and one of mine is undedicated. And it's kind of cool having one with a message in from the time, kind of saying, happy birthday, here's a Doctor Who card kind of thing. Down the bottom there, it's very interesting. This lot turned up on Australian eBay last year, and one of my friends grabbed them, and it was actually a sales sample. So someone in Australia was going around and showing them. Oh, actually, I think he said they had emigrated with them, so they weren't from here. But there was a sales card for Doctor Who birthday cards, which must be the only one that exists. That's quite amazing that it actually turned up. And then there's the opening in the middle. You open the cards and there's the message in them. And it's a bit hard to see. I should have done a close-up. But the Daleks actually have candles on their head, so it looks like they're sort of birthday cakes, which I think is very cool. Down the bottom, some more fantastic artwork. There's the 2 Doctor Who writing pads, again, which are really impossible to find because I guess kids used them and wrote them, and when they finished them, they threw them out. But even harder to find than the pads are sort of the Dalek pencils because they got sharpened away to nothing. And then, do you know what's sitting next to the Dalek pencil there, Dags?
What the Dalek itself? That would be an eraser, wouldn't it?
No, it's a pencil sharpener. So basically,
I should have realised that because someone made a mention about it. Still have the pencil sharpener because gotcha. So I should have
I've got a pencil. I've never had the pencil sharpener. It's a really hard item to find. But the vial would violate the Dalek because basically you put the pencil in the back and screw it. Yep.
I was going to say your Khaled mutant would be having a whale of a time. It's always important to have lead in your pencil, kids. So there you go. Oh dear.
Yeah. So, like the Doctor had all these. The Doctor's neutron exterminator, but the Joker came along and just showed the Dalek his pencil trick.
Yeah, how to make it disappear. Yeah, absolutely love it. So yes, that's the problem when you have those. When you have to insert one item into another item, how do you do it without making it look suggestive? So that's never a good thing. So yes, very very cool. But they do look good though.
And here's another one of those items. My friend Jonathan sent me some pictures that I have never had. I think there's only a handful of these that exist unused. The Doctor Who Dalek paint by numbers set. So again, you'd get the box, and inside the box there was the little set of paints and a brush, and then you had the color cards and the sheets of paper that you use to colour them. And the Dalek on the front, again, is almost exactly the same Dalek that's off the painting book. The Daleks in the actual sets look quite weird. They don't look like Dalek shape to me. They look like something, totally different. So someone was just doing Daleks from memory, I think.
2 things that have come out of it. Actually, there's 3. I'll just get to this quickly. So John has asked if the pencil sharpener is based on a Hertz mold. Do you know the answer to that question? Yes or no?
It actually really looks like the Hertz Dalek, but the pencil sharpener is only, that tall, and the Hertz Dalek's that tall. So they probably had a Hertz Dalek as a guide to work on when they made the pencil sharpener, but I don't think they would have taken the mold and changed it or anything like that. But
2 things. I find amongst all the merchandise that you're showing, aside from the records, it's amazing how so much focus is on the Daleks, not on the Doctor himself, and not on any of the other aliens, right, and the Cybermen and whatever else.
What's really interesting in the first episode, I was showing some of the Walter Tuckwell. He was the guy who was in charge of merchandising Doctor Who. And it wasn't him or the BBC that just limited it to the Daleks, because his card and his catalogues had contact me if you want the rights to Daleks, Vord, Minotra, the Zabi. So they really at the time didn't think Daleks were any more special than any of the other aliens, but they obviously captured the kids' imagination, and kids were asking for Daleks, and that means the people who get stuff produced are the retailers, and they were going to the BBC and getting licenses for stuff that was in demand, and it was Daleks. And you can see there are some toys like the Give a Show projector and the annuals that use different monsters, but 90% of it was driven by the Daleks. And when you look at the numbers, when we were looking last week at the sales numbers, and the Dalek Outer Space book was selling 250,000 copies, you're going to stick with a winner, aren't you? You're not going to go, we'll try another alien and see if we can sell 250,000 of the Ward book or something like that,
Yeah, but I get that, and I was just sort of intrigued whether there were any like social groups, that's the wrong term, who objected to what was going on, because effectively you're marketing the bad guys, right? They exterminate, they shoot the shit out of everything, and as opposed to sort of like really focusing on the good guys. I found that really interesting.
It is interesting. I think back at the time, there wasn't anything really extreme that they were pushing. I think a lot of the stuff they did now, like if they tried to do it now with a lot of guns and stuff, it might not fly so well. The BBC were really good at sort of self-censoring, and they didn't push stuff. And last week I mentioned there was a Doctor Who jigsaw that showed the Dalek going into the TARDIS, and they banned it. It was withdrawn, and they changed it. You've got to remember, things were a lot different then. I don't know if you've ever seen the BBC show Quatermass, which is interesting and it's of its time, but if you watch 6 episodes, it's a bit of a snooze fest. At the start of that, it actually has a warning. People of a weak disposition might not enjoy this show, and you watch it and it's absolutely, nothing. So they really were good at sort of self-editing and making sure that kids weren't, too terrified by anything.
Yeah, it's still an interesting observation that you focus all your marketing, primarily nearly all of your marketing and merchandising, on your bad guys, and you're actually bypassing your human good guys, including the companions. It's like they just don't factor in at all. And just to prove my point, more freaking Daleks.
Yep, so here's some more items. Again, all these items, there's probably only 1 or 2 that sort of turn up these days. There's the Dalek eraser board in the box there, and then they're basically the same as you can see down the bottom, the Wonder Slate, and there's another version of the eraser board, which basically you draw on it and then you pull it up and it erases the picture and you can draw on it again. And they give you a whole lot of templates, so you can trace the templates and then rub it out or erase it and do it again. The eraser board is one of those items. I picked one up. I can never tell my wife what I paid for that. That would be instant extermination. And the stencil set is another one of those things where by using it, you kind of destroy it because you're painting over it. So the only one I've ever picked up is the one down the bottom where you can see that the stencils have been kind of used.
So already I've just picked up on the fact that there's like already a Dalek font that they're using. And the other thing is, if you slip me a 50, I won't tell your wife either. Very, very cool.
She'll never find out. I said the show was about Doctor Who, so there's no way she'll ever watch it. But yeah, and here we go. One of the mainstays of the 60s and probably one of the biggest sellers ever was the Louise Marks Tricky Action Dalek robots, which are just incredible, and they're still a great toy to this day, and they must have sold millions of these. What is really interesting, it's one of those things where they sold really well in the 60s. In the 70s, and they reissued them in the 70s in different colours. In the 80s, they cost more to get than they do now because there was no eBay. And it's one of those things with eBay, anything from the 60s in the 80s was pretty hard to get. But with eBay and everyone on computer, they must have sold so many of them that every other house in the UK had one. So in the 80s, when I got my first one, I paid $400 for it, which was a huge amount. And they probably only go for half of that now because they've become more common with them turning up on eBay. They're a fantastic toy. What is really hard is getting them, I guess, in nice condition with a nice original box. So there we have the original version in the blue box, and then they reissued it a year later with the red box. And then there's the really nice artwork with the portal looking through the Dalek saucer into the Dalek inside. And that was the same basic toy, but it was a friction one instead of a battery one, so it was more push along. And then down the bottom, there's the construction kit, which is basically the factory sending out kids an unproduced one, and you get to put it together yourself. And then above that, there's the smaller friction drive by Marx, which are a nice toy. All of them have that amazing 60s artwork on, which is what sells it really well, I think. If I was a kid, and this is the thing we forget, they only saw Doctor Who in black and white. So if you went to a toy shop and there's these colourful boxes with black Daleks and silver Daleks and all these amazing paintings, you'd probably be blown away. I think the impact of seeing stuff back then had much more effect on kids than it does now, where everything's in 4K and you can order something online and get it the next day, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we discussed that last week about how colour was designed to bring in children's eyes. So two things I wanted to bring up. One is you notice that the font here is different to the font here. So clearly between the two, they've said, oh, yes, we've now established a Dalek font, which is kind of cool. For those out there who don't know why they use the friction drive, because if Aaron told his wife how much he paid for one of these, there'd be a lot of friction in his house, that's for sure. And I just want to respond to a comment from the Vile saying about how Darth Vader would have been the biggest seller with Star Wars collecting. The problem, the thing is, Mr. Vile, you're absolutely correct, but he was being sold with all these other characters as well, your Hans, your Chewies, your Lukes, whatever, and they were equally as popular. What I was saying is that it seems to be all the focus here is on the Dalek characters and nobody else, and the main leads of the show are not even being factored in very, very little compared to the Daleks. That's why it's disproportionate in terms of way it's being marketed. So that's why
the interesting thing is you could think, oh, maybe William Hartnell and the companions got cheesed off that the Daleks were so successful, but tie-in merchandise was so rare at the time. I guess for kids shows like Thunderbirds and stuff like that, there was a bit of tie-in merchandise and maybe some of the Bond movies and other stuff, but it wasn't the commercialized version of tie-in merchandise we have today. So they were shocked that Doctor Who was so big, and I think they would have been pleased it was a success, even though they weren't featured in it a lot. And when they were featured in it, they often didn't get paid, they didn't know, and it'd have to be their agent going and sort of collecting it later, saying, hey, you've used my client's image, can we get a bit of a kickback from this? The one person that was cheesed off by the success of the Daleks was the BBC designer that actually came up with the concept and the look, because Terry Nation, who was the original author of the Daleks, the design he put was basically they're mechanical people who have an eye on a lens and weird machines in their mechanical hands. And that doesn't sound anything like a Dalek, really. So it was Ray Cusack who came up with the designs and had that iconic Dalek look. And there are stories like when they took off and Dalek Mania happened that he said to Terry Nation, oh, these are going to make a bit of money. We can do quite well out of this. And Terry Nation said, yep, you just leave it to me. And he never heard another thing. And I think the BBC and Terry Nation probably made, hundreds of thousands of pounds. I don't know if they made millions of pounds, but hundreds of thousands of pounds. And apparently he got a £15 bonus in his paycheck for all of that. But there you go. That's the kind of thing that happens.
You do wonder if there's actually a huge Doctor Who fan group out there who support all the aliens and bad guys except the Daleks. The Daleks just piss them off. And just make matters worse, there's more of the damn things.
But here you go. You were saying about they only push the Daleks. Well, you can see all around the edge there are Daleks. You've got the Dalek nursery toy for your babies. You've got your Dalek metal wind-up toy. They're quite hard to get. There's the Dalek rollerkins down in the middle centre. They're little tiny thumb-sized Daleks on ball bearings that you can push around. And then on the right there's a couple of Dalek Skittles. Now, they came in a Skittle set with 10 of them and a meteorite ball that you could knock them over, but I've only ever managed to find a couple. On the top there is the Dalek Bendham, which is one of the most unusual concepts ever. I had Bendhams as a kid, but they were more the Pink Panther or Bugs Bunny, where there's a metal armature inside and then there's foam over the top and then you can move them around and position them. But they did a Dalek one, which basically means only the gun and the eye and the sucker stick can move. And they're impossible to get because they're made out of foam. So basically they disintegrate to nothing unless they've been kept, hermetically sealed, put away out of the light for the last 50 years. But they do turn up once in a while. They're quite hard. But what I was going to say, in the middle there is one of my favourite items of Doctor Who merchandise. That's a mechanoid. Now, the mechanoids came out and they were going to be the next big thing. They were going to be bigger than the Daleks, and mechanoids got pushed in the newspapers and in the series, and then the toy companies made them. But basically, they're only in one episode of Doctor Who. They are great-looking robots, but they didn't take off. There was no mechanoid mania. Like there was Dalek mania, but they are still one of my favourite monsters, and maybe their favourite because of what you were saying. So much of the merchandise was Daleks. It's actually really nice to have something different to fight the Daleks.
Yeah, exactly right. And just to make matters worse, there's more effing Daleks.
You were saying, oh look, there's lots of pictures of guns, killing Daleks, but none of humans. This was, if you really wanted to go and exterminate people, this is what you wanted to get for Christmas. There are 2 Dalek suits. There's the red one on the left and the incredibly rare Scorpion one on the right, where there's only a few known examples. And there's only a few known examples because apparently they had massive orders for them coming up to Christmas in 1965. And then there was a warehouse fire. And so they were all destroyed before they got shipped. And it was too expensive to remake them, so they never got made. So a couple were given to the stars of the show, Carol Ann Ford, who's Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter. I think she was given 1 or 2 for her children. And then a couple got out before the fire and have turned up. And I think every time one of these suits turns up, breaks records for like the highest price Doctor Who merchandise goes for. There's only a couple of them that are known. The one I've put pictures of there are nicer ones. You can see pictures online, but this was an eBay auction from years ago where it looks like he's had a really hard night on the town. He's got like a droopy eye stick, and then obviously the bottom one, his wife has said, "You're not coming in that shell," so the mutant has had to climb out and use the shell outside kind of thing. And the crazy thing about that is there's hardly any of them that are in existence, but apparently there was 3 versions of it in different catalogues. There were different versions. I've only seen the one version. And amazingly, one turned up boxed. And I haven't got a picture of the box, but the box was huge, and it was actually a police box, and kids could use the police box as actually something to get inside and play Doctor Who with your Dalek suit, which is quite a innovative, you know what I mean? Quite a cool thing to do.
Yes, there's nothing worse than having a droopy eye stick. All I can think of is that you have that little Aaron picture from earlier on, and you stick him down the bottom here, looking up at the eye stalk and go, "Oh my God, I love you. You're the greatest thing ever." Dear. But I like this one. Be a real Dalek. So don't be a fake one or a dodgy one. Be the real bloody thing. So, yes, that's a good way of promoting your product. What can I say? More effing Daleks.
And here again, we have Daleks, and more Daleks, but also some of the other things. So it does show when they were merchandising other stuff, they did, manage to convince people, maybe try the Menoptera or maybe try the Zabi. So you've got the Dalek badges. And the interesting thing about this is the Zabi and the Menoptera badges obviously didn't sell anywhere as many as the Daleks. So carded examples didn't turn up until about 10 years ago, and people debated whether they actually came on cards or if they were just on a Dalek card and they just put a different badge on. So they're really rare. Those badges, the Zabi and the Menoptera, if you've got the original carded one, you can look at about $1,000 each for those. I don't have either of those carded, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would, even without really knowing this stuff, even I would argue that, yes, they would be worth a fair whack, considering that they were actually produced by the product. And John has said he's never seen a good picture of the Scorpion suit before, and he said, thank you very much, which is, we aim to please, John. We're not just a pair of good-looking, handsome nerds. Actually, we're not even that. We'll just get stick with the video, shall we? But, yes, very, very cool, a Dalek badge. But, yes, I think if you had into the other, like the Menoptera and the Zabi one, you would be like the coolest cat in town, because you're just a little bit out of not following the gender general thing of everybody's just going for the Daleks. You're doing something a little bit different, and I think that's actually kind of cool.
I think as well, I was saying on our How to Be Smart on eBay episode, for years and years I did a search for Butterfly Man badge, because the Monotra goes for so much. I thought, well, someone who's not a Doctor Who fan is going to list this one day. And sure enough, I picked one up for 99 pence because it was like Butterfly Man badge and no one else found it and saw it. It took about 5 years of looking.
Yeah, the downside would be if you were to flash that around to like some Doctor Who fans today and go, look how cool this is, they'd be going, what's that? Is that from some other show? At least with the Daleks, to be fair, they're identifiable. But unfortunately, some of the more obscure aliens that once upon a time were probably as popular as hell, other than your Cybermen, have just sort of died a death of obscurity. So anyway, not to worry.
Here we go. And again, we're sort of getting to the odds and ends. Like I was saying, there's the larger Hertz mechanoid there, but Sheryl Lee did do mechanoids as well. They had a bit of faith in they were going to be the next big thing, and they put the money into it, and then they did not sell at all. So they quickly retooled it. So if you look at the four in the bottom there, they're mechanoid versions from Doctor Who. Then if you look the ones on legs standing behind, they're the ones that sold the most because they changed them from mechanoids to space probes, or Doctor Who fans call them space pods, and sold them with astronauts. So most of the ones that turn up these days are actually the space pod version, and the little box there with the space pod and 2 Daleks, that's not how it came. I got one of those and I pulled 2 of the astronauts out and put 2 Daleks in. And then down the bottom, you can see we've got one of the few items of Doctor Who merchandise that does feature William Hartnell, and that was a police box, TARDIS money box. And there's been a few versions of that released over the years. It's still quite hard to find, but it's a nice piece if you can find it. And it kind of does fit with the Dalek and mechanoids that were made by Sheryl Lee.
I'm surprised, now that you've brought up the TARDIS, that it didn't appear in more pictures promoting some of the other products, even the Dalek pictures, just to sort of get that familiarity. So instead of just having Dalek pictures on the covers of everything, chucking the TARDIS in there as well. I mean, we haven't seen the TARDIS for ages, and suddenly it's come up. Oh, yeah, I'm surprised that didn't get a bit more sort of the marketing screen time. But, it is what it is, I guess. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And mopping up a few other little odds and ends that don't really fit into any category. We've got Dalek transfers, but again, you can't see it too well. They have a lot of the different monsters, so they've got the Vord and the Mechanoid and other things with them. A Doctor Who meteor shower, which is basically a snow globe, but a Doctor Who version. Again, that's one of those rare items that just never ever turns up. Really impossible to find. I've never had one of those. The Dalek kite, again, they probably sold a lot at the time, but they're really hard to find now. And the Dalek spinning top, again, which is just impossible to find, and boxed ones, I think there's only 1 or 2 left in existence. The background of that is actually Dalek wallpaper. So you could get Dalek wallpaper at the time and deck your walls with Dalek wallpaper. I've never had the Dalek wallpaper. And then on the far left, there's a build-your-own Dalek out of paper kit, which you could send away to the Daily Express, and it would rock up, and then you could make an origami Dalek.
Yeah, it's very funny. I just said a moment ago, I'm surprised they didn't use the TARDIS in more pictures with the Daleks. And sure enough, they have. The very first thing that comes up, I didn't even know that was even going to pop up. So there's the TARDIS up there with your 2 Daleks. So there you go. Should have had me in the marketing area at the time. What do you reckon?
I think you'd have been a genius.
Very good. Look, it's a good point that Paul makes about trying to market the TARDIS because it actually is a legitimate police box, but they obviously found ways around it. But unless, of course, there was just no demand, or people looked at the box and go, I hate the police, therefore I hate the TARDIS. And as a result, I'm not going to buy anything from it. So there you go. I like you here. You're right. The Dalek kite would get blown away. Thanks, Calvin. So there you go. Now, we're going to move on to, there's actually a video we've got to show. Now, my hard drive's fallen asleep, so it'll take a few seconds for this to warm up. But just talk amongst yourselves, kids.
Oh. Will Doctor Who escape this time? Buy Wool's new shape Skyray with double flavors of raspberry and orange. And you get a free color picture card, one of a series showing Doctor Who and the Space Raiders battling with Daleks. Free, when you buy Wall's new shaped Skyray. Only 6 months.
So
Sorry,
how
that actually played faster than I thought it would. That little kid, you could just say that little kid. He was like, "Oh yeah, he's definitely that's little Aaron with his." Oh, this is the greatest thing ever.
how come every episode, every kid is little Aaron? I don't collect everything, but yeah, that would have been me. You're absolutely right. That's really amazing because apart from the movies, the Daleks were in color in the movies. That would have been the first time color Daleks were seen on television, and that is, of course, an ad for Skyray ice lollies or icy poles, which you could collect a series of cards from. And there are a few consumables that were released in the 60s. There weren't a lot. There was the Dalek Sweet Cigarettes. Again, next to that is a set of uncut cigarette cards, which interestingly have the Daleks, the Doctor, and the Ward in. So they did use some of the other monsters, and they're a really nice set of artwork cards. Then you've got the ad we just saw, the Skyray ice lollies, and what's really interesting, they're for Patrick Troughton, and by the time Patrick Troughton was the Doctor, sort of Dalek mania had died off, and Doctor Who wasn't as popular with kids as it had been, so there wasn't a lot of merchandise. So this is probably some of the nicest merchandise that was released by Patrick Troughton. Now the album is hard to get. The cards you can collect a set on eBay still quite for a reasonable price. The wrappers are absolutely impossible to find, and then there are other things like advertising for them that is very, very hard to find as well, but some collectors have them. Now there's a couple of items there I'm not sure of. Down on the bottom left is a Dalek lollipop. Now I bought that in a collection in the 80s, and a guy told me it was from Brighton and he thinks it was from the late 60s or early 70s. Now, I have spoken to a couple of collectors who have said, no, it's from the 80s. And I've spoken to other collectors that said it is from the 60s and the 70s, but they sort of, there was a shop there that would whack out different designs and the Daleks would be around for a while and then they'd disappear and then they'd come back. I have only ever seen one other of them, and it was in red, not blue. And you can see that's in blue, but it started to dissolve because it's so old that it has just started to disintegrate. And then in the middle, there's an advert for Dalek Rock. Rock is the long tube of, hard candy that you can get, and that was sort of what was wrapped around it. So it was basically a company taking rock candy and putting Daleks around it and saying, now it's Doctor Who rock candy kind of thing. But consumables, especially, the edible ones, they're the hardest things to find because, nobody kept them at the time. They're very hard to even keep something from that era.
A few things. So John made a mention, we're talking about the TARDIS, about police litigation using the TARDIS as a police box. You would have thought they would have thought of this before they even started making the show. So you would have thought that everybody was okay with it at the time. Greg has made a point of saying you don't see the Doctor's face in the ad. That's probably intentional because they probably didn't have the rights to show it. Here's a question for you. You have to keep this relatively quick. Do you know who's got the world's largest Doctor Who collection, and whether it be yourself? Have you seen their collection?
No, it's not me. There's a website online called the Doctor Who Space Museum that sort of chronicalizes every item of Doctor Who merchandise, and the owner of that, Chris Hill, probably, I would say, publicly has the most expansive collection. A friend of mine, Mick Hall, was a Dalek collector, and he's been on a couple of documentaries, but I think he's sold a lot of his stuff now. And that's the thing. I know a lot of big collectors, but people collect for a while and then they sell stuff off again, and stuff goes round and round into different collections. So it's really hard to say who's got the biggest Doctor Who collection. And then I've had customers who've got massive collections, but they're private. They don't want people knowing they've got a huge collection. So there are collections out there that no one even knows about that are absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, well, considering there's merchandise being produced for 50 plus years, there are probably some people who specialise in one decade versus another decade and all the modern stuff. And yeah, you're right, it probably would be very difficult to work out who would have the biggest. Now it's 9:30, so we will keep going. So we've still got 18 people watching, so we'll stick with it. Now, what I wanted to point out, you've got sweet cigarettes. This is something you certainly couldn't market today. And, of course, as we know, in Australia, those sweet cigarettes, were actually known as fags back in the time, which have now been changed to fads, I think. But to actually say, for children, cigarettes, knock yourselves out, kids. Yes, tuck away. So be a real Dalek and smoke a cigarette. You know, real Daleks don't smoke cigarettes. I hate the damn things. So yeah, it's very cool.
And here we go over to the Dalek movies. And these are some of the posters internationally for the first Dalek movie, as it was marketed in different areas of the world. I haven't put every single poster I could find because that would probably be an entire episode. But it's nice to see the Japanese version with the Japanese characters on, which I always think is quite striking. I think what is funny is the middle one there. Now on the big screen in full color, and it's just a black and white ad, which is quite ironic. But one of the big selling things about the Dalek movies, it was the first time you could see Doctor Who and the Daleks in colour. And boy, did they go for Technicolor. So there was the red Daleks and the black and gold Daleks and the silver and blue Daleks, and they were very impressive. And a lot of the ads from around the world concentrate, again, more on the Daleks than Doctor Who. They often show the Daleks dwarfing the human figures, and the Doctor sidelined. And Peter Cushing was the Doctor, so he was quite a big star. But even then, the advertising concentrated more on the Daleks.
Yeah, I do like this little gag here. It's Delectable Lark. So, yes, very, very cool. And they're popping up everywhere, and including even like conquering America. So, yes, very, very cool, very international. It was mentioned here that Patrick Troughton was averse to publicity. So, yeah, that would probably explain why there's not a lot of merchandise with his face on it. But very groovy.
And this is for Dalek Invasion of Earth, the second movie. And again, this time they didn't advertise the Daleks. It was more the Robo-Men, which I didn't think would really have much selling power for kids at all, because if I wanted to go see Dalek Invasion of Earth, I don't want to see the Robo-Men. I want to see Daleks exterminating people. The interesting one here is the bottom, which is like a lobby card. And whoever put the lobby card together didn't realise that they printed the Dalek saucer upside down. So that's like an upside down picture. It's like when sometimes you see the X-Wing fighters are printed upside down because whoever's putting a poster together for Star Wars don't realise it. But there's some of the international posters for Dalek Invasion of Earth. And some of them there do, feature Peter Cushing a bit more than the first movie. But even then, his sidekick in some of those pictures, she gets a bigger sort of promotion on the poster than the Doctor does, which is quite weird, and probably shows me that they really didn't know how to merchandise this outside of England, where people weren't seeing Doctor Who weekly and didn't know who Doctor Who was, kind of thing.
See, I disagree, because it's Italian. I think it's Italian. They've said no. The machines won't get the audiences. The girl will get the audiences, get the audience into the cinema. And I think they've done that intentionally because no one's interested in machines. Show the hot girl, and bang, that's where the ticket sales come from. So depending on that, because it was, you think of the target audience at the time, they probably did deliberately market it to young adolescent dudes, it would make sense.
Kelvin there is saying the failure of Dalek Invasion of Earth meant there wasn't a third movie, which is quite a shame, because Dalek Invasion of Earth is a better movie out of the two, and you would think it would do better. And if they had done a third movie, it probably would have been The Chase, which would have been really interesting to see on the big screen, because on the small screen, the budget couldn't really do it justice. And the mechanoids were in The Chase, so you might have had the mechanoids in Technicolor on the big screen as well, which would have been amazing to see.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So you look at the posters, one which features the girl, and the other ones that feature the Daleks, and you think, okay, which one had the better ticket sales? So it would have been very interesting to find out. So there you go. We've only got about 3 or 4 slides left, so just hang in there, everybody.
We're almost at the end. So this is some of the movie merchandise. A lot of the merchandise was based on the Daleks. So there was the official Doctor Who and the Daleks comic, and that's the first appearance of Doctor Who in America in a comic book. That was Dell Comics. It's still relatively easy to pick up on eBay, but, because it's Doctor Who and Doctor Who's got popular in America, people have put an extra 0 on it from what it used to go for, kind of thing. You could actually buy Super 8 versions to watch the movie at home before VHS. There was competitions to win the Daleks out of the movie. The Sugar Puffs promotion is famous with giving away Daleks. Famously, one of them got burnt at a bonfire night for Guy Fawkes. they won a Dalek and burnt it in a bonfire. That's just pouring thousands of money down the tube. But I guess at the time, if you won a Dalek and you didn't really have anywhere for it, what are you going to do with it?
Well, that's because they wanted a Zabi in the movie and they didn't stick one in. They stuck Daleks in it. And like, if you're watching this show, you'd be thinking, I'm sick to effing dicks of death of the effing Daleks. So toast the damn bastards. Or get the bazooka out and freaking use it for real.
I promise, Dags, this is getting the Doctor Who out of me for at least a couple of weeks. So you won't have to hear Dalek again for a while. Down in the bottom there is something that turned up in eBay. It was actually an invitation to the premiere of the first Dalek movie, and it came with autographs of, I think it was Bernard Cribbins and Peter Cushing. It is the only Peter Cushing autograph I have ever seen where he has autographed Peter Cushing, Doctor Who, because he's known for a lot of other things, so he usually doesn't sign it as Doctor Who, but because it was for the premiere of the movie, he obviously did. And then the Dalek Pocketbook, which is an amazing little paperback from the 60s, has a really great colour picture from the Dalek movies on. So there wasn't a lot of merchandising for the Dalek movies. I'm sure it helped the toy Daleks sell really, really well and all the BBC stuff sell well, but they didn't push the merchandising, which might have been a way to make more money out of the movies when they had done it.
Yeah, that competition about winning a Dalek from the actual film prop. I mean, it's got to be some whiskers on it, eh? So imagine, what if you happen to be living in Madagascar or some really obscure country and you won it? Shipping it down there wouldn't be much fun, that's for sure. So anyway.
And we're getting to the end now. We started with the William Hartnell Radio Times issues and the cast cards, and Patrick Troughton got a Radio Times cover for each of his seasons. I guess the Tomb of the Cybermen isn't his last season, but he got 3 Radio Times covers. Again, really hard to get in nice condition. They're very sought after by collectors. And down the bottom, you could still send to the BBC and ask very nicely, and they'd send you promotional cards. And if you're really lucky, you might get an autographed one. And again, they're very highly sought after by collectors, and where the Radio Times generally turn up on eBay and go for a lot, the cast cards just don't turn up at all. They're very hard to get.
At least the Patrick Troughton one here and here is in the same handwriting, so that's one consolation. So and they are different. They're slightly different, so they're not printed on. They've been written on. So remember that we had that discussion about whether you got 2 autographs on the same person. They look totally different. So at least that's not the case in this instance. So but they look good. So very, very cool.
Yeah. And lastly, I put this last little slide together. This was Doctor Who in Australia in the 60s. It was pretty sparse if you were a Doctor Who fan here. Now, I'm not saying all that other stuff we saw in the last week and this week didn't come here. Some of it did, but there wasn't very much produced locally. One of the unique things that was produced here was the swap cards. And I did a lot of research into these because there isn't much information on them. These were from a set of swap cards that were released in the 60s. And you bought them out of a machine, like a gumball machine. So you put your money in, you cranked it, and it gave you a random swap card. And at one stage, I had about 18 of them, and I was trying to put together a complete deck. So you'd have a playing card deck, but I never got any red cards. And then I found out from someone they never printed any red cards. For cheapness, they only did the black cards. So I had a whole lot of clubs and spades, but no diamonds and hearts. And when I found that out, I kept a couple and I sold the rest. Now, back in the 80s, they used to turn up in swap card collections. Now they're absolutely impossible to find. I'd say they're one of the hardest items of Doctor Who merchandise to get. In the middle there, I think it's very interesting, is an ad from TV Week, and it's got not a peep out of them thanks to the ABC TV, and they're watching Doctor Who. And the ad basically says, if you're a housewife, kids get home from school, switch on the TV, and the ABC will keep them occupied right through to dinner. And it talks about all the different shows, and like the last one is Doctor Who kind of thing. So I think that's quite charming and of its time. Then we've got the Dalek movies, and the 2 Australian posters are unique. They're the Australian debuts, and they're very, very hard to find. One of them is fantastic, the colour one, and then the Dalek Invasion of Earth one is a bit there were better ones printed overseas. Down the bottom is a lantern slide, and before there were trailers for movies, I guess there were always trailers, but they used to show slides. You'd remember the Val Morgan presentation with slides for different products. Well, they used to have lantern slides for different movies as well. And this is from the Capitol Cinema here in Melbourne. And it's a double feature, Dalek Invasion of Earth and Jack Palance in The Mongols. Now, I've had 2 lantern slides. When the cinemas sort of closed down and moved, there was sort of a mass distribution, and they turned up everywhere for a while, and then they totally disappeared. They would be pretty rare, unique Australian items. And then we've looked at them before. There's the 2 Australian pressings of Doctor Who records. So that was about it. If you were a Doctor Who fan in Australia in the 60s, there was not a lot of stuff to collect.
2 things. These days, that television there would be the size of a phone, because everybody's watching everything on bloody phones these days and no one's ever paying attention. And the ace up here needs to be DW. That way you got Doctor Who Club.
Well, it's very interesting. They didn't call him the Doctor, but on that card they do. He was usually Doctor Who at that point in time. And I think they did that because they might not have been licensed. And if they just called it the Doctor, then they wouldn't get in trouble if they were, instead of calling him Doctor Who.
Very, very good. Williams actually said he's got a friend who actually saw the movie in the cinemas back in the day. Yeah, that would be pretty unique. It would have been a major spin out. Seeing it on the big screen in colour, as you said, it would have been just absolutely awesome. Yeah, you're right. Fantastic. And Thomas is saying he really enjoyed some of the collectibles. Yes, it's very, very cool. So get out there and start buying stuff, kids. So there you go.
So yeah, thanks for indulging me with Doctor Who for 2 weeks. We'll try and get back onto the track with something more general, or something different for the next couple of weeks anyway. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. Again, I've been away for a while. If anyone wants to come in and talk about Doctor Who or just nerd out about anything, feel free to. Later this evening, I'll put all the slides from the last 2 weeks up on the Sci-Fi Zone website. So if you want to have a better look at the pictures and scour through all of them to see what you've got and what you haven't got and what's in those pictures, you'll be able to in a couple of hours' time.
Yeah, and sorry for running over time, kids. There was a lot of stuff to get through, but people have stuck around, which is actually very, very cool. So there you go. All right, we're going to leave it for now. We're all Docky Hooed out. We're going to get in our TARDIS and bugger off out here. So there you go. So in the interim, make sure you leave all your collectibles mint in box.
Or exterminate them.
Well, you're not with a big-ass bazooka.
Or rip them off the card.
Yeah, no worries. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye.